Hello there, welcome back to my world of stuff. My name is Paul Mount. Something a little different for a new series of videos for the channel. I've seen people do it before and they seem quite popular, and I thought you might be interested. You've probably seen the backdrop of my channel is my Blu-ray shelves, and I thought it might be interesting just to run through my collection as it is so far from A to Z. An alphabetical run through of the Blu-rays that I have. They're all in order, so there shouldn't be anything stray. So yeah, this is going to be an occasional thing. I might do an episode a week, updating it as we go along when new titles come in. So let's have a look at my Blu-ray collection. Right, we're starting off, because that's the way to do it, with the letter A, as they would say on Sesame Street. Not a massive lot of A's. I've got them out off the shelf. And I'll just pick them up and show them for you and have a little chat about the films as we go along. The first one then in my Blu-ray collection in the A's is The Abominable Dr. Phibes. I picked this one up, I believe, online sale a couple of years ago. Classic 1970s horror film from, in fact, 1971. Starring the late, great Vincent Price. Love means never having to say you're ugly. Sort of a slightly tongue-in-cheek camp sort of horror film about he's a scientist whose wife dies, and he starts to get revenge from the medical staff who weren't able to bring his wife back when she was seriously injured. It's good fun. I haven't seen it for a while. Stars Vincent Price, Joseph Cotton and Hugh Griffiths, and the late great Terry Thomas. It's a good fun horror film. Second up in the letter A, we have Partridge. I'm a huge fan of Steve Coogan, a huge fan of his Alan Partridge character. His output can be a little bit hit and miss. Some of the formats don't work as well as they should, but he's been on TV, he's been on radio, and this is the feature film that came out. It came out 2013. It's very funny. It's not often that TV comedies translate particularly well to the big screen. I think this did. The story obviously is a little bit broader. It's more of a sort of an adventure as much as an Alan Partridge exploit, but it is very funny. Steve Coogan's always good value, and this does not stay as welcome. It's very entertaining, and probably worth a rewatch. Actually, I haven't seen it for ages, and it's actually this is the special 2-disc edition with exclusive stuff. I'm terrible these days. I don't know about you. I don't really watch a lot of the new special feature stuff, which I should really, because that's one of the great sort of selling points of the format is all the extra features, and I don't really watch them as much as I should. But good film. Third up then is The Amazing SpiderMan. This is the first reboot film with Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man. Yeah, it's not a bad film. I mean, slightly frustrating. It's fairly symptomatic of the way that Sony mishandle the Marvel characters that they have the rights to, and they sort of mess up the continuity. Of course, we had the original 3 Spider-Man films, and then the fourth one with Tobey Maguire and Sam Raimi again directing was in pre-production. Then they decided they want to go down a different route, and they kicked it all off again with, I believe it was Mark Webb, appropriately, directing Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man. Andrew Garfield's very good. This isn't a bad film, but it is a bit frustrating because you sort of think, well, I wanted the Spider-Man I already had. I want that continuity. I don't really want a new continuity. But of course, we've had Andrew Garfield back and Tobey Maguire in No Way Home. And it's quite good because I felt that he did the 2 films. Didn't get a chance to make his impact in his own trilogy. And it's nice that he's got a sort of closure on the character now by being able to come back and do the character again. That's The Amazing Spider-Man. Interestingly, I haven't got The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which is a bit odd. I thought I had that, so I might pick that up if I see it around. It's not a great film, but if I see it for £1 somewhere, I'll probably will pick it up. This is an interesting one. I've never seen it. American Hustle, starring Christian Bale, Bradley Cooper, Amy Adams, Jeremy Renner, Jennifer Lawrence. Directed by David O. Russell. This is one I think I picked up. I would imagine I picked this up from Poundland when they had one of their blitzes. They haven't had new discs in for ages, but this is one that I think is probably still on the shelves in Poundland. You can probably get it for £1 now. But I picked it up. As you can see, it's never come out of its plastic wrapping, and it's got its slip cover. Yeah, I'd like to say I'll watch it eventually, but I can't. I can't see it happening for a while. That's American Hustle. Next up, we have one of the great horror films, and I want to pick this up on 4K. I believe it's out on 4K. It is, of course, American Werewolf in London. John Landis's classic from 1981. I'm thinking 81. Great film. Haven't seen it for ages, and probably one to watch next month. Month after next, which is October, when we come towards Halloween. I might do a little week of Halloween horrors, and this could be one of them. It's a great film. If you've not seen it, I can't recommend it enough. It's a terrific film. Next up, we have... here we are. It just goes to show that I'm not really on top of my collection. This is the Arrow Special 4K. Not the 4K, this is the Steelbook edition, which I actually don't remember buying this. Obviously bought it fairly recently. It may well have featured in one of my previous physical media hauls. I don't remember. But there it is. The Arrow Special Edition, complete with booklet and interior art and stuff on the sleeves. So there we are. I do have one of the special editions which has come out. This is I think, a fine example of when your collection gets a little bit out of control, when you don't know exactly what you've got. Because I've got the box standard original Blu-ray, and of course I've got the Arrow Special Edition. It's called Double Dipping. Next we have, I quite like this film. I haven't seen it for years. It's Matt Damon and Emily Blunt in The Adjustment Bureau. I think you can pick this up. It's one of those ones that turns up in charity shops. I think it was another £1 Saw this in the cinema. Sort of a slightly low rent, sort of high concept action film directed by George Nolfi. It's about do unseen forces manipulate us? Matt Damon stars in the thriller as a man who glimpses the future fate has planned for him and realises he wants something else. Yeah, I probably need to rewatch this. I haven't seen it for ages. I think it sort of fizzles out a bit, but I think it's an interesting idea with some decent action. And yeah, it describes it as Bourne meets Inception, and I think it sort of is. But yeah, probably one that's worth rewatching at some point. Next up, we have, this is interesting. This is The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, Terry Gilliam's great folly of a film. This came out in 1989. This is a film that I saw back in the day when I started doing a bit of sort of journalism for film magazines like Starburst, which I'm still writing for all these years later. And this is a film that a friend of mine, Tim, and I sort of championed this film. My friend got to interview Terry Gilliam. This is a film that probably should never have been made because it was so perverse and so uncommercial, and it sank like a stone at the box office. It is the story of the famous historical liar Baron Munchausen. It's told in a typical Terry Gilliam sort of larger-than-life fashion. And I saw this film over and over again at the cinema to support it. I bought the soundtrack album, and I picked it up on Blu-ray a few years ago, tried to watch it, and whoa, this film has not aged well. It has not aged well. It's virtually unwatchable now, I would say. But it's an interesting curio of a time when Hollywood would allow people like Terry Gilliam to do the most peculiar and uncommercial films. It was actually one of the films that brought Uma Thurman to the public eye. John Neville was a famous TV actor in the 60s and 70s in Britain, cast as the lead in this bizarre visual feast, but it's difficult to watch these days because it creaks quite a bit. Next up, we have another interesting one, The Adventures of Tintin, The Secret of the Unicorn. This is directed by Steven Spielberg, sort of motion capture animated film, and the animation is slightly uncanny valley. It's a slightly sort of weird animation. The script is actually by Joe Cornish and Doctor Who's Stephen Moffat. It's interesting. It's one of those films that sort of didn't do very well. I think Tintin's not very well known in America, so it didn't find much of an audience overseas. I think it did all right in Europe, but it wasn't a massive box office blockbuster. And although there's been lots of talk about doing a sequel, I think Peter Jackson was one of the associate producers, and Stephen Moffat, Edgar Wright, and Joe Cornish. So it's a good pedigree of people working on it, but it didn't catch fire. And there's been sort of talk of a sequel for years and years. The voice cast, of course, includes Simon Pegg, Nick Frost, Andy Serkis, Jamie Bell, Daniel Craig, with music by John Williams. So everything going for it, but didn't work for some reason. And as I said, there's been talk of a sequel, but that's clearly not going to happen now. But it was an interesting effort. And again, it's a film I've not watched for ages, so I probably should go back and take a look at that at some point. Here we have a film called Alien Abduction on Blu-ray. This is a sort of a found footage film, which I quite liked at the time. The only reason I picked this up is because on the back of it, you will see a quote from the review I wrote for Starburst magazine. Tintin inventive, highly recommended. That was me. It says Starburst magazine, but I wrote that. So I picked this up for £1 just to have, I think, that quote in my collection. I think I enjoyed it at the time. I still review stuff for Starburst, not as much as I used to, but I used to review all sorts of odds and sods, and this was one of the better found footage films of that slightly tedious craze. Here's a very weird film. This was a Netflix film which found its way onto physical media. Natalie Portman in Annihilation, which was directed by Alex Garland, who does some interesting films. His most recent one, of course, was Men, a bizarre film with Rory Kinnear, which came out fairly recently, which I quite liked, but it's seriously warped towards the end. This is an interesting science fiction film, Natalie Portman, about this peculiar thing called the Shimmer, this energy field which stretches across the world, and military troops have been sent in to investigate it and never come out, and Natalie Portman leads a troop into it to find out what's behind it, and it's all a bit weird, but it's a very good film, very visually striking, as you expect from Alex Garland's film. Very highly recommended if you've not seen it. Next up, we have a film, I watched this only recently. This was recommended as one of the films of its year, which would be 2020. It stars Mads Mikkelsen. It's called Another Round. I watched this not long ago, and I really enjoyed it. It's a Dutch film with subtitles, so don't let that put you off. It's about a group of slightly bored middle-aged men. I think they're all teachers, and they all decide to see how and if they can maintain a normal life slightly drunk. So they're constantly drinking, and they reach the point where they drink more and more to see, but they get their tolerance to it, and they get more and more drunk to try and keep their lives together. It's an interesting, it is very dark, sort of comedy-ish, I suppose, comedy drama. Unusual. I picked this up, I think it was in the sale in HMV again. It's probably in one of my physical media pickup videos a long while back, but it's well worth a look if you get a chance to see it. Very unusual film. Next up, we have, this is a film I've never seen. This is Apocalypto, Mel Gibson's film from a few years back. Mel Gibson, before he fell out of favour, and he's sort of clawing his way back. Interesting historical film. About Mayan culture, and I think it's all in subtitles, and very striking and very violent apparently, but it's one I haven't actually got around to watching yet. Next up is one of my absolute favourite films. I love this film. Ron Howard's Apollo 13, the sort of true story of the ill-fated Apollo 13 mission to the moon, which had to be abandoned because there was a technical fault on the ship and they had to come back to Earth and were nearly lost in space. Great film. And even though I remember seeing this the first time, even though I knew the outcome because I remembered the incident, it's still very tense because it's the sort of story of what happened. Stars Tom Hanks, Kevin Bacon, Bill Paxton, Gary Sinise, and Ed Harris. Houston, we have a problem. It's where that legendary phrase comes from. If you've never seen it, again, it's absolutely a film worth picking up. After that, we have a more recent film, one of the better DC Extended Universe films. Jason Momoa is Aquaman, which of course came out 2018. I enjoy this. It's sort of, it's not Marvel level, but it's one of the better DC films. And I'm looking forward to the sequel, but of course it's just been announced that's now being put back, whereas it should have been out this December. It's now gone back to next December. So in fact, it will be 5 years between Aquaman films, which, let's face it, is too long. But this is a good film. Do a rewatch. I think I haven't seen it for a while. Then we have another film I haven't seen, the Oscar-winning Argo, starring Ben Affleck, Bryan Cranston, Alan Arkin, and John Goodman, based on the true story. Won Oscars years ago, back in 2013. I think it came out in 2012. Picked this up. This could possibly be another Poundland one. It's got its slipcover. Never watched it. Will watch it. Can't say when. Then we have one of the great science fiction films of recent vintage, very thought-provoking film, directed by Denis Villeneuve, who of course we know now from Dune, Arrival, starring Amy Adams, Jeremy Renner, Forest Whitaker. A very realistic and all too believable story of first contact when aliens arrive on Earth. It's not a big, loud science fiction blockbuster. It's much more thought-provoking and thoughtful than that. And all the better for it. If you've not seen it, well worth tracking down at Arrival. Nearly there, only 4 more to go in the A's. This is an interesting, schlocky horror film, As Above, So Below, which came out... This came out... It's so hard to find the year in this, 2014. This is about an expedition that travels into the real-life catacombs under the streets of Paris. Eternal home to countless souls. A team of explorers ventures into the uncharted maze of bones. They uncover the dark secret that lies within the city. It stars Perdita Weeks, Ben Feldman, Edwin Hodge. And unless I'm very much mistaken, I think this is the one that's got James Buckley from The Inbetweeners in it. Yeah, not a bad little horror film. I saw it in the cinema. I don't think I've watched it since I picked it up on physical media. But yeah, this could be on my sort of horror Halloween list. Then we have, I picked this up. This is called The Asylum. I picked this up a few months ago because I think somebody else on YouTube picked up a copy quite cheap from Amazon. And I thought, I'll have a look at that. Nice red Blu-ray cover. Yeah, interesting horror film set in an old abandoned asylum where a group of idiots, young people, decide to have a party. There are rumours that this brutal and controversial home for the criminally insane still houses the spirits of its tormented victims. And of course it does. And lots of horror ensues. It's all right. It's not bad. Not worth more than the 3 or 4 quid I paid for it. And probably not one I necessarily watch again. And this one, you'll have seen me displaying this one in my most recent physical media pickup video. This is Attack the Block with the new, with the slipcover. I picked this up from CEX a couple of weeks back. For $2.50 because it had the slipcover, which I hadn't seen before. It looks rather nice. Yeah, that's a good film. I haven't seen it for years. I'll probably do a rewatch. And the last one in my A's, of course, is Avatar, James Cameron's extraordinarily successful film. It's still one of the, I think it's still the most successful film of all time, amazingly. And the sequel is due out at last this Christmas. So I'm tempted to rewatch this. But I'm going to wait to see if we get a UK cinema re-release. I know it's happening in America. I've never seen it in the cinema on the big screen. I never went to see it originally, but I did see it on Blu-ray or DVD probably. And I've only ever seen it once. I remember watching it and thinking, I'd like to see that again straight away because it's got that sort of feel for it. And I never did. So I think it's probably time to see it again. But I will wait to see if it's getting a cinema re-release. I would imagine it will because it's been so long since that came out. People will need to be reminded of it to get things back up to speed, to get the audience in. So I will probably catch it in the cinema then. If not, I'll watch it here in the old cinema room. Right, that's the A's on my Blu-ray collection. Let me know what you thought of this video, if you thought it was entertaining. Anything in here that you've got, let me know. Leave a comment, like and subscribe. Thumbs up, watch the video, because quite oddly, the last few videos of mine are really struggling to get views. I'm struggling to get out of the 30s and 40s, whereas everything was before that was getting about well over 100. People aren't watching lately, so naughty people. If you subscribe, look at the videos. So like and subscribe, leave a comment. I'll see you soon. Until I do, keep checking the stuff.